to go over the differences between what these policies are. So the first one is going to be with a whole life. Okay, so a whole life policy is structured and it focuses just on building cash value, and it's just going to give you a little bit more flexibility when it comes to your money, because the thing is with a whole life is it's going to give you a fixed cost of insurance for your whole life. Okay, so if we look at the difference, we're going to have a whole and then we're going to have an IUL. Okay, so with our whole, our insurance cost is going to be fixed the whole time. So if we look at a graph of our cost of insurance, and let's say we're living to 100, it's going to look level. Okay, so the insurance carrier is going to look at you. They're going to say, we think he'll die at 100 or whatever they age it out to. We're going to level that across the whole time. Okay, now with an IUL, it's going to go up. Okay, so it goes up over time. So what that means is, so with an IUL, one of the things you have to watch out for is it's an annually renewable term by definition. So what does that mean when we're looking at structuring a policy? That means that your cost of insurance, so how much you pay each year, it kind of goes like that. It's going to keep going up until eventually if you live long enough, they just level it off. You're fine. So, but the thing is, with that, you have to take that into account. A lot of people do not tell you that when you're looking at an IUL. They're not going to disclose what those cost of insurance is. Now, the problem that you run into is if you don't properly fund it down here, okay, what will happen is eventually your cost of insurance is going to be pretty much swallowed up by your gains, okay? So I know a lot of people, when they talk about it, the next part is going to be the gains that are going to be on that policy, okay? So when we look at the gains that are going to be made, so with a whole life, typically you're going to be guaranteed a 4% on your money, and then you get what they call dividends. Okay, so dividends, those, they can range 2% or so. Sometimes they're more, but with a whole life, what we're really looking to do is how can we securely have our money and not lose it? Now, with an IUL, typically you're going to have a floor, which is with a lot of companies, it'd be like 0.25%. And then you might be able to get 10, 12%. Okay. So, with that, you're going to have the upside, but you're also going to have downside of a 0.25. So that's kind of how those are structured. So with a whole life, you're more of just guaranteeing the one predictable growth, while with an IUL, you are going to have a variable. When it comes to utilizing these policies, typically I'm always going to recommend a whole, just because if I can take my money here and I know that I'm always going to get around that the whole time, it's much, much more predictable. While with this, if you have a 0.25 year, right, but if you have it up here where your cost of insurance is high, you do run the ability to start losing money on your policy. Okay, so the thing you do have to keep into account is the fact that that can happen. So you just want to make sure that if you do want to go with an IUL, you do need to structure it properly, but you also do need to have somebody show you what those different premiums are, because you need to be able to plan for that. Because if you don't plan for it, you're going to run into an issue. Okay, so when we look at flexibility with our money, a whole life, I would say, is a little bit more flexible, just because when you're taking loans against things, your money is just more predictable. While with our IUL, what we're always going to have is our cost of insurance that is going to continue to go up. So depending, because a lot of people are going to tell you this is going to be for retirement, right? You put it in retirement. But our cost of insurance when we're retired, that's when it really starts to climb. So what you're doing is you're effectively taking a loan out on your policy, but at the same time, all of your expenses, your policy expenses are going to go up. And the thing you don't want to run into is in the event if you really need that money or it's a down year, you can run the issue of something happening. So we just want to make sure that in every scenario, we're fine. That's why I'm more into a whole bank, a whole life, to do that, just because it just gives you more security. When I look at money, I say, how can I get this and how can I just not lose it? Right? So it's one of those, that's how I always recommend. Now, if you do want to decide on which one you want, this is kind of how I would decide. So first, take into account your age and your health, okay? A whole life is always going to be easier to get just because it's over your whole life. Typically, an IUL is going to be underwritten pretty close to a term, so your health is going to have to be a lot better. So pick an IUL if you're comfortable with market exposure, right? Obviously, it's going to be indexed, so it's going to depend on the performance. And then you want to make sure that you are properly funding it, because if you're not properly funding it, you will run into issues later on. And the last thing you want is to be 70, 75 years old, 80, and that policy swallows itself and there's really nothing you can do. Okay. Now, why would you pick a whole life? So if you're doing a whole life, the reason why I would pick a whole life would just be if you just wanted stability, right? If you just wanted straight cut growth all the way through, that's how I would always pick a whole life, just because you're able to look at it and you can see what your money is going to do, and you don't have to sit there and guess and go, I hope the market does good for 10 years, right? You can put your money in, you know what that fixed return is going to be, and so you're able to predict and use your money how you need to, instead of putting it in something that can change, because if your 401k goes down, you're going to run into that issue as well. So it's just a way, it's not so much a 401k alternative, but an infinite bank is always a great storage of wealth, just because once you put it into that account, you don't have to worry about it going away. So those are the differences between an IUL and a whole life. Let me know if you want me to make a more in-depth video of them, but a lot of people do get those confused on why you would pick one or the other. Personally, I have a little bias to a whole. But if you do want to look at an IUL that's properly done, let me know. I'm more than happy to show. Or if you do want to look at getting one of these policies, let me know. I'll put all my contact info down in the comments, and leave comments, like, share. The more videos I make, I guess the better I'll get. So I'll see you guys next week for the next video. Thanks.